The charge that was laid against him as a threat against Caesar. Jesus said to him, "You have said so." But when he was accused by the chief priests and the elders, he gave no answer, because you have to know when to be silent and when to speak. Only a fool says everything that's in their heart.
Nobody expected this clip to be the one that stopped the internet cold, but that's exactly what happened. The second Chrisean Rock hit record and looked straight into the camera like she was staring down the entire world. This wasn't a flex. This wasn't chaos for clicks, and this definitely wasn't another "they hate me but I'm still winning" rant. This was different. Her voice cracked, her eyes told stories her captions never could, and suddenly the same timeline that's been clowning her for months went dead silent. When Chrisean Rock breaks down, the internet doesn't just watch, it reloads, screen records, and argues like it's a courtroom with no judge. Because here's the uncomfortable truth nobody wants to admit out loud. When she said she had an update about her son, people didn't know whether to expect healing, denial, or a brand new chapter of chaos. And that tension right there made this moment explode faster than a celebrity divorce announcement. One clip, one shaky breath, and suddenly fans, critics, and full-time haters were leaning in like a secret just leaked from a locked folder. This didn't feel like content. It felt like something she wasn't supposed to show us. And that's exactly why nobody could look away. Chrisean Rock has never been a stranger to chaos, but this moment didn't feel like her usual brand of loud controversy or viral defiance. This felt heavier, like the kind of silence that makes people uncomfortable because it doesn't come with jokes, captions, or a punchline. For months, the internet has treated her motherhood like a public trial, replaying clips, slowing down frames, and acting like a jury that never sleeps. Every livestream blink, every offhand comment, every shaky moment involving her son was turned into evidence by people who have never met her, but swear they know her life better than she does. And when someone lives under that kind of microscope long enough, eventually they crack or they explode, sometimes both at the same time. The background to this update didn't start with one video. It started with a long trail of suspicion, speculation, and constant online noise. Fans weren't just watching her anymore, they were monitoring her, treating her social media like a 24-hour surveillance feed. One clip would spark concern, another would spark outrage, and suddenly entire timelines were filled with strangers arguing over what kind of mother she was based on seconds of footage. Some people claimed they were worried, others claimed they were protecting the child. But let's be honest, a lot of it was fueled by the internet's favorite addiction, drama disguised as concern. And Chrisean, whether she wanted to or not, became the main character in a story she didn't fully control anymore. When the update finally came, it didn't feel scheduled or strategic. There was no sense of a PR team smoothing out the edges, or planning a redemption arc. It felt like something she recorded because holding it in any longer wasn't an option. Her face didn't have that familiar defiant edge, the one fans have seen during arguments, beefs, and public fallouts. Instead, there was hesitation, like she knew whatever she said would be dissected, doubted, and debated within minutes. And that's the cruel irony of being a public figure in a crisis. Silence makes people suspicious, but speaking makes them ruthless. She talked about her son in a way that felt less like an explanation and more like a release. Not defensive, not performative, but tired. Tired of rumors traveling faster than facts. Tired of people deciding outcomes before hearing her side. Tired of being reduced to a headline instead of a human being learning in real time. And that tone alone sent shockwaves through her fan base, because this wasn't the Chrisean Rock people had boxed into a stereotype. This was someone visibly overwhelmed by the weight of constant judgment. The first wave of reactions hit instantly. Supporters flooded the comments claiming this was growth, maturity, and a woman finally taking control of her narrative. They pointed out how different this moment felt, how her voice cracked, how she struggled to keep composure, how this wasn't entertainment but exhaustion. Meanwhile, critics weren't convinced at all. To them, it was too late, too reactive, too convenient. They questioned timing, motive, and intention, suggesting this update only existed because pressure had reached a boiling point. And then there was the third group, the loudest of all, who didn't care about context or nuance and simply wanted someone to blame. Social media turned into a battlefield of hot takes within minutes. Clips were reposted with dramatic captions, reaction thumbnails popped up faster than emergency alerts, and suddenly everyone had a theory. Some people claimed the update confirmed their worst fears, others insisted it proved the internet had gone too far. Influencers weighed in like unpaid prosecutors, dissecting body language and tone as if they were reading a confession instead of watching a vulnerable moment. It was messy, loud, and painfully predictable. What made this update feel different, though, was how it exposed the uncomfortable gap between online perception and real-life complexity. Chrisean has always been treated like a caricature, a walking headline designed for memes and mockery. But motherhood doesn't fit neatly into viral boxes. It's chaotic, emotional, confusing, and unforgiving, especially when lived in public. The update didn't magically erase concerns or criticism, but it forced people to confront the reality that there's a child involved, not just a storyline. Behind the scenes, this moment didn't come out of nowhere. There had been whispers of private struggles, quiet moments away from the camera, and attempts to navigate motherhood without a manual while millions watched. But those moments rarely trend. What trends is conflict, outrage, and shock. And Chrisean's life has been edited by the internet into a highlight reel of her worst moments, with very little room for growth or grace. This update cracked that edit wide open, even if people didn't want to admit it. The tension didn't just come from what she said, but from what she didn't. There were pauses, moments where she seemed to search for words that wouldn't invite another storm. Those silences spoke volumes. They hinted at stress, fear, and the pressure of knowing that one wrong sentence could spark another wave of backlash. In that way, the update felt less like a statement and more like someone trying to breathe in a room that keeps shrinking. As the clip continued to circulate, the narrative began to split even further. Some fans started revisiting older moments, reinterpreting past clips through a new lens of empathy. Others doubled down, arguing that emotion doesn't equal accountability. And right there is where the controversy deepened, because the internet rarely agrees on what accountability even looks like. Is it silence, change, explanation, or apology? Everyone wants something different, and no one waits long enough to see if growth actually happens. This update marked a turning point, whether people want to admit it or not. Not because it answered every question, but because it exposed how brutal the public gaze can be when it decides someone is beyond redemption. Chrisean didn't present herself as perfect, healed, or victorious. She presented herself as overwhelmed, emotional, and trying to hold it together under impossible scrutiny. And for some viewers, that was enough to pause the outrage, even if just for a moment. But the calm didn't last. Because once vulnerability enters the chat, the internet tests it. People begin speculating about what comes next, whether this was the beginning of change or just another chapter in a long saga of public breakdowns. The update didn't close the book, it opened a new one, and the tension only grew stronger as more eyes locked in, waiting to see whether this moment would lead to growth or get swallowed by the next viral storm. The internet never lets a moment breathe, and Chrisean Rock's update was no exception. The second the clip finished its first lap around social media, the reactions didn't just continue, they mutated. What started as concern quickly turned into full-blown spectacle, because once emotion goes viral, it becomes currency. People weren't just reacting anymore, they were choosing sides, building narratives, and attaching their own agendas to her words. It was like watching a quiet confession get dropped into a stadium full of megaphones, where every whisper gets turned into a scream whether it deserves to or not. Celebrity commentary channels jumped in like this was a surprise album drop, except instead of music reviews, it was moral breakdowns and psychological assessments from people whose only credentials were a ring light and an opinion. One creator praised her for finally being real, while the next accused her of emotional manipulation in the same breath. Memes followed immediately, because the internet can't resist turning pain into punchlines. Screenshots of her face, mid-sentence, were frozen, zoomed, captioned, and weaponized like reaction GIFs for future arguments. It was brutal, fast, and somehow completely expected. Then came the pop culture comparisons, because nothing gets the internet buzzing like turning a real-life situation into entertainment shorthand. People compared her breakdown to every public celebrity meltdown in recent memory, from Britney's infamous moments to reality TV stars crying in confessionals. Except this wasn't a scripted scene or a carefully edited episode designed for ratings. This was raw footage dropped into a culture that thrives on chaos. And suddenly, motherhood, mental health, and celebrity accountability were all mashed into one messy conversation that nobody could agree on. Public outrage didn't stay contained to one platform either. Twitter treated it like a debate stage, Instagram turned it into a comment war, and TikTok made it a trend. Audio snippets from her update were clipped and reused under unrelated videos, stripping context and amplifying emotion. One viral sound later, and people who had never followed Chrisean Rock a day in their lives were suddenly chiming in like they'd been part of the story from the beginning. That's the dark magic of virality. It invites strangers into deeply personal moments and hands them a microphone. As the noise grew louder, other celebrities began reacting, some subtly, others not so much. A few posted vague stories about praying for mothers or protecting children, which the internet immediately treated like coded messages. Others liked or commented on posts supporting Chrisean, igniting new speculation about alliances and silent endorsements. Every double tap became a statement, every repost became a position, and suddenly the update wasn't just about her anymore. It became a social referendum on how much empathy a controversial figure is allowed to receive. The memes took on a life of their own. Some were sympathetic, framing her as overwhelmed and misunderstood. Others were savage, using humor as a shield to avoid confronting the discomfort of the situation. The internet loves laughing because laughing is easier than sitting with complexity. And Chrisean's life has always existed in that uncomfortable space where seriousness collides with spectacle. Her breakdown was treated like content, dissected frame by frame, until the original emotion almost got lost under layers of commentary. What really escalated things was how quickly people started rewriting the past. Old clips resurfaced, dragged back into the spotlight like receipts from a case that never closed. Moments that once seemed chaotic or confusing were now being reinterpreted as signs and warnings. People spoke with the confidence of hindsight, acting like they'd seen this coming all along. The irony is that these same moments were often mocked or ignored when they first happened, proving that the internet only takes things seriously when tragedy feels possible. Meanwhile, fans who had supported her from the beginning found themselves in defensive mode. They weren't just supporting a person anymore, they were fighting a narrative. They argued that growth doesn't look pretty, that healing isn't linear, and that judging a mother through a screen is the lowest form of certainty. Critics fired back just as hard, claiming that accountability shouldn't be delayed by emotion. The comment sections became digital battlegrounds, where empathy and outrage clashed non-stop with no winner in sight. The update also sparked a broader conversation about public parenting, especially when it comes to women. People questioned why every mistake gets magnified when the mother is controversial, while fathers often skate by with minimal scrutiny. That double standard hovered over the entire discourse like an unspoken truth. Chrisean wasn't just being judged as a person, she was being measured against impossible expectations that shift depending on who's watching. And the internet, true to form, argued about everything except its own role in the chaos. As the storm grew, brands and platforms quietly kept their distance. No endorsements, no public support, just silence. That silence spoke volumes. It was the kind of quiet that suggests risk assessment happening behind the scenes, decisions being made about association and image. Chrisean's reputation, already fragile in the eyes of mainstream audiences, was being recalculated in real time. One emotional video had the power to reshape how she's perceived, not just by fans, but by industries that thrive on optics. The Wildest part of this escalation was how quickly compassion turned conditional. People who praised her vulnerability one day were ready to withdraw support the next if she didn't respond correctly. It became clear that the internet wasn't rooting for healing, it was waiting for a storyline. Redemption arcs only work when they're neat and satisfying, and real life rarely offers that. Every pause, every follow-up post, every moment of silence was analyzed for meaning, as if the absence of information was a statement in itself. By the end of this phase, the update had evolved into something far bigger than a mother speaking on her child. It became a mirror reflecting how the internet consumes pain, how quickly empathy expires, and how controversy feeds algorithms better than compassion ever could. Chrisean Rock didn't just share an update, she accidentally exposed the machinery of online outrage. And as the reactions continued to spiral, one thing became painfully clear: this story was no longer in her control, and the fallout was only getting started. By the time the dust started pretending to settle, the damage had already been done in ways that don't show up in trending tabs. Chrisean Rock's update didn't just spark reactions, it rewired how people talked about her, and not in a clean, heroic way. This wasn't a redemption arc neatly tied with a bow, this was reputational whiplash playing out in real time. One minute she was being humanized, the next she was being scrutinized even harder, because once the internet senses vulnerability, it doesn't protect it, it tests it. And that test came with consequences that stretched far beyond one emotional video. Her public image entered a strange new phase where sympathy and suspicion existed side by side. Some viewers softened, admitting they saw her differently after that moment, while others hardened, claiming the breakdown confirmed everything they already believed. That split followed her everywhere. Every post after the update was read through a new filter. A smile looked forced. Silence looked guilty. Confidence looked fake. Even normal moments became evidence in a case that never officially opened but never stopped either. When perception shifts, it doesn't just change how people talk about you, it changes how they interpret your existence. Relationships around her felt the ripple effects immediately. Supporters became more vocal, almost protective, like they were guarding something fragile. Critics became more relentless, convinced that pressure was the only way to force accountability. And then there were the quiet exits. People who used to orbit her publicly stopped commenting, stopped reposting, stopped engaging, not because they suddenly disagreed, but because controversy is contagious, and association comes with a price. That kind of distancing doesn't trend, but it's one of the loudest consequences of public scandal. Behind the scenes, the implications were even heavier. Opportunities don't disappear with announcements. They fade through unanswered emails and stalled conversations. Industry doors don't slam shut, they quietly stop opening. An emotional update about her son put her in a category executives don't like to navigate, where complexity outweighs marketability. And while fans argue about right and wrong, brands argue about risk. That invisible shift is the part no one screen shares, but it's often the most lasting. Public perception of her motherhood also entered a new, uncomfortable chapter. The update forced people to confront a truth they'd been dodging. Judging parenting through a screen is a brutal, incomplete sport. Some viewers admitted they'd gone too far, that concern had turned into cruelty without them noticing. Others doubled down, convinced that scrutiny was justified because the stakes were high. That divide didn't resolve, it calcified. Once people choose a narrative, they rarely let go, especially when algorithms reward outrage more than reflection. The aftermath also reshaped how Chrisean herself was expected to move. Every future action became symbolic. If she posted less, people assumed she was hiding. If she posted more, they accused her of exploiting attention. If she laughed, they said she didn't care. If she cried, they said she was performing. There was no neutral ground left, because the internet had already decided this story needed a clear villain or a clear hero, and reality refused to cooperate. That tension hung over everything like a storm cloud that never quite breaks. What made this phase especially volatile was how curiosity replaced patience. Viewers weren't waiting for growth, they were waiting for the next moment. The next clip, the next slip, the next confirmation of whatever they already believe. That's the cruel part of viral scandal culture. It doesn't ask whether someone will change. It asks how entertaining the process will be. Chrisean's breakdown didn't end the conversation. It raised the stakes. Because now every move felt like it mattered more than ever before, even conversations about mental health and pressure became twisted. People spoke about empathy while still demanding access. They preached grace while refreshing feeds for updates. The contradiction was glaring. The same audience calling for healing was also fueling the machine that made healing nearly impossible. And that contradiction sat at the heart of the aftermath, exposing how social media turns personal crises into long-running series with no finale planned. As weeks passed, the update became a reference point, a before and after moment in her public story. Commentators kept circling back to it, using it as context for every new development. It became the moment people would say, "This is why," whether they were defending her or condemning her. That kind of moment sticks, not because it answers questions, but because it symbolizes everything unresolved. And unresolved stories are the internet's favorite kind. What lingered most wasn't the clip itself, but the uncomfortable clarity it brought. Chrisean Rock exists at the intersection of fame, controversy, and real-life responsibility, and that intersection is unforgiving. Her update didn't clean up the narrative. It exposed how messy it always was. It reminded people that behind every viral moment is a human being navigating consequences that don't end when the timeline moves on. And that's where this chapter leaves us. Not with closure, but with tension thick enough to cut. The internet is still watching, still judging, still waiting for the next development like it's inevitable. Chrisean Rock didn't just break down on camera. She cracked open a conversation that refuses to stay contained. And if history tells us anything, it's that stories like this don't fade quietly. They resurface, escalate, and evolve, because controversy never really ends online. It just waits for its next trigger. This wasn't the end of the saga. It was the moment everything shifted. The calm before another storm nobody's ready for. And knowing how fast the internet moves, whatever comes next won't just be watched, it'll be magnified. Stay locked in, because this story isn't done writing itself. You made it this far, so let's be real for a second. Stories like this don't just happen, they explode, and they always leave fallout behind. Chrisean Rock's breakdown wasn't just a clip, it was a warning shot that fame, pressure, and real life don't mix cleanly when the internet is watching every breath. And if you think this is where the story ends, you haven't been paying attention. This timeline never sleeps, and neither do the scandals that keep resurfacing when you least expect them. If this video had you questioning narratives, rewinding moments, or side-eyeing the comment section, do yourself a favor and smash that like button like it owes you money. Likes tell the algorithm you want the real stories, not the watered-down press release versions. And don't just watch quietly. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Was this a moment of growth, a pressure-induced breakdown, or the start of something even bigger? Say it loud, because the internet is already arguing without you. Now here's the part most people skip and regret later. Hit that subscribe button and turn notifications on, because stories like this don't end when the camera cuts. They evolve, they resurface, and they come back louder with receipts. This channel stays ahead of the chaos, connecting dots before the mainstream catches up and breaking down scandals the way nobody else will. New drama drops fast, narratives flip overnight, and when the next shocking update hits, you don't want to be late to the conversation pretending you just